We've moved from the bomb and the bullet, and the weapon of choice is now politics.
It is a divided city, but walls are in people's minds.
Some of the stuff that happens here in our two communities, it wouldn't happen in leafy suburbia.
It has risen from the ashes, most of it changed beyond recognition. On the banks of the Lagan, they went from building ships to building peace. But scratch the surface and you find something else. A city still divided by walls, 99 of them. Streets still segregated by bricks, mortar and religion. In some parts, they lock the gates each evening between Catholics and Protestants. And despite assumptions, our exclusive poll has found that young people are just as divided as the older generation. This is the story of Belfast today, 20 years after the Good Friday Agreement. They police the peace lines between the two communities in these armoured vehicles. The threat of attack here is still deemed severe. North and West Belfast are the most challenging, the most dangerous parts of this city, and that's where we're going on patrol with the Police Service of Northern Ireland. Policing was and still is a significant issue here. The old Royal Ulster Constabulary has long been replaced, but these streets are still heavily policed.
That'll be Cannon Street, Tango 46 over.
They deal with different issues now: drugs, mental illness, suicide. Communities haunted by the past. Sergeant Craig McDowell has been a police officer for the best part of 30 years.
Every family probably in this area in North Belfast will have known somebody who's been involved in troubles, be it killed, injured, or been involved in killing or injuring somebody. Again, that's on both sides of the community. So that baggage will always be there. It can't go away. It'll never go away.
The hopes and dreams of a shared future are far from the modern reality. One side marches for a united Ireland. The other marches to remain in the United Kingdom. Pollsters from Sky Data asked a representative sample of the public here for their honest assessment. So how has life changed? 61% feel safer than they did 20 years ago. But 51% still say most or all of their friends are of the same religion. And 23% never expect power sharing to be restored. Julie Ann is a loyalist. A chance meeting set her on a path to the City Council. She says forcing enemies to share power deprived this place of genuine reconciliation.
We've moved from the bomb and the bullet, and the weapon of choice is now politics. And politics, as you know, affects everyone's day-to-day life. It affects their community. It affects things such as the schools, obviously, and their health. And people feel that we're still very much at war.
Is sectarianism a generational thing? Will Northern Ireland eventually outlive it?
No. The legacy of our conflict has very much been our past. It is our present. And it will be our future until such times we address it.
We asked people if they thought sectarianism had gone away. 51% feel it is less divided in Northern Ireland than it was 20 years ago. But 24% think it is more divided now. And Brexit's making that more pronounced. Half think it has deepened division. Maggie says she wants to move on but can't. It's 47 years since her mother and aunt were shot dead by British soldiers in Belfast. You must have been really hopeful when the agreement was signed that Northern Ireland would leave all of that behind, that your children and grandchildren would grow up in a different environment.
That was definitely my hope. But in the meantime, I'm still back in 1971. I can't move forward. I need the truth. I need people to know that my mummy and my Aunt Dorothy were not terrorists and did not shoot out of the car and were killed in cold blood.
Do you think Brexit has added to the sense of division?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to start to fire up all these emotions. People are going to get frustrated, and I'm petrified of for the want of a better word, the trouble starting again. I couldn't go through all that again. I don't think it's fair.
So there's another divider in play now, but tourists can't take pictures of the invisible Irish border. Almost every Catholic we polled opposes border controls between Northern Ireland and the Republic. But the majority of Protestants we polled oppose them in the Irish Sea.
Walls are in people's minds. If we don't try to break them down, we're never going to break the bricks and mortar down.
Jim was convicted of attempting to murder a policeman. A former IRA prisoner, he grew up in Ballymurphy, a Republican heartland.
This is the police station here. You can see now, that's the front of it. And you have a Catholic community lives here. And you can see the length that this goes. And you can see the way that it's monitored. Why is all that money being spent on the security? Look, we're still going. We're still seeing the size of the security apparatus.
Belfast hasn't had its Berlin Wall moment. Tommy, a Protestant, has lived in the shadow of the barricades for decades.
That's where Jean McConville was abducted.
But he says there's more tension within each community now than between them. Turf wars between drug dealers.
Drug scenes getting out of hand, to be honest. Heroin, cocaine, you name it, they're all on the street.
You talk about people who prey on the vulnerable. Are you talking about former paramilitaries?
Mo Mullen used to say the dogs in the street know what's going on in our areas. And we know what's going on in our areas. Criminality, there's no such thing as defending our communities. That's a lot of nonsense. They're destroying our communities. You know, the kids are dying and their families are cracking up because of what's happening in our street. I mean, some of the stuff that happens here in our two communities, it wouldn't happen in leafy suburbia, let me assure you.
And that's the real legacy of the Troubles. Drugs, mental illness and suicide. The number of people taking their own lives has risen by a third in the last 20 years. More people have died by suicide since the agreement than were killed during 30 years of violence. Jim was released from prison early under the terms of the agreement. He now works with young people across the city.
Well, there's a thing called transgenerational trauma, which is very prevalent in my opinion in today's society. You can't go through 30 years of conflict. And when I say conflict, I mean 30 years of war. There was a war on our streets. Belfast was a war zone, and the parts that would have been more so would have been the parts that, you know, are the socially deprived areas of Belfast.
Boxing rescued Dean from the margins. His sister was knocked down and killed by a stolen car. 3 of his brothers died by suicide. His fiancée also took her own life.
She was very confident and very bubbly and just, so she was. You wouldn't have thought like an average person in the street wouldn't have thought she was ill. She wouldn't have thought she had mental health problems. One of my younger brothers boxed with me as well. That's the one who took his own life. He used to box with me and we used to do everything together. He's like, we weren't just brothers, we were best mates, so we were.
Dean's quite a resilient young man. He would have to be given the issues that he's faced over the years. There's lots of other young people out there who are the same. We have to try and look at the real issues that young people are dealing with.
We've got a dispute about Brexit, we've got the breakdown of power sharing at Stormont, we've got a wall between two communities here. It all feels a bit broken, doesn't it?
It does, and it seems very pessimistic. But at the end of the day, I have to get up in the morning. I have to make sure I've got enough money to feed the kids, make sure my house is I've got my rent for my house or whatever, petrol in my car. I don't get that by worrying about the wall up and Brexit coming. I'm worried about where's my next loaf coming from. Well, a lot of people are like that.
Julie Ann breaks one stereotype.
Hey.
She's a loyalist in a same-sex civil partnership, a mother of 6-month-old twins.
How difficult was it for you coming out in your community?
Coming out within my community, there was no, grand unveiling of the new Julie Ann or anything. People really didn't bat an eyelid at all. We have 2 political parties at the head of our government, one who is very staunchly unionist and wants to maintain and protect the union, and the other wants to destroy it. One wants to unite the island, under one form of governance. And so whilst that exists, the social issues don't necessarily feature. Well, I think the entire community has its roots in religion, whether you're practicing or not. We're all stamped at birth. So we all have our religion from birth.
So are attitudes changing on some issues? 76% want same-sex marriage introduced in Northern Ireland. 54% support unrestricted access to abortion for women up to 12 weeks pregnant. And 69% believe all schools should be integrated.
Catholics and Protestants, we're just the same people, like. We've both grown up in the same type of situations and stuff, so the younger people are our next generation coming up, so they are, instead of, it doesn't matter, it really doesn't matter, we're all the same people, so we are, as I said, like, we are all the same.
Every morning they reopen the gates. People travel freely again from one side to the other. But until they're open permanently, the new dawn they were promised here cannot break.
We can only do so much, but we're police officers. Although we are from the community, we're still human beings. And our safety is the most important thing, hence we're still numbered Land Rovers, still numbered cars, still wearing flat jackets, we're still carrying a gun.
So they still have guns, but they don't have a power-sharing government. Belfast may have changed, but not to the point where things are normal here.
This is no man's land, the space between Protestant homes on one side and Catholic homes on the other. It's the moderate voice of the middle ground that's been drowned out here, lost, some say, in a system of government that has kept the peace, but kept the walls too.